Joining us now, a member of the Appropriations and Budget Committees, Republican Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. Congressman, always good to have you with us. Thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
I'll put the question to you that we've been putting to Democrats and any elected official who comes on our show the last few days is, help us find a way out of this. How do we get those 800,000 federal employees paid? They're going to miss a paycheck tomorrow, not to mention all the contractors as well. You've said shutting the government down over a border wall is not fair. You say, in my opinion, there is a way to do this where both sides can say, hey, we quote-unquote won. So what is that path forward?
Well, I think you can either look at this as a fight to be won, which is, I think, where we're at now, and that's a mistake, or a problem to be solved. And to solve this problem, in my view, you've got to make it, frankly, a little bit bigger than it is right now. So there's not obvious winners and losers. So personally, I would add DACA to the list of things that this group ought to discuss. I would also add in the next few months, we've got to deal with both the debt ceiling and we've got to set the spending levels for government, or we'll go through a 10% sequester-related cut that no Republican wants for defense and no Democrat wants for domestic programs. So make it bigger, then deal with multiple issues that you're going to have to deal with anyway, and then I think everybody can walk away. The president gets something on border security. There's a bipartisan consensus for DACA reform. We all know that we don't want to go through sequester and have unnecessary and frankly devastating cuts, and if you don't deal with the debt ceiling, you're going to have an economic crisis. So make it big enough that everybody's got something to win when they walk away, and I think that's the road forward.
Interesting to hear you, Congressman, lead with DACA and to mention it a couple of times there. Is that something you're willing to put on the table in exchange for a border wall?
Absolutely. We put it on the table last year and did exactly that on two different votes. You had a majority of Republicans for each vote. You couldn't get any Democratic votes last year, but I think they weren't sure it would go through. Again, if you have a major deal here that's big enough where everybody can point to something that they won, then I think they'd be much more willing to compromise. Right now, again, this is a winners and losers issue, and that's not going to work out.
Congressman, is the $5.7 billion wall, that physical structure, is that a deal breaker for you? Does that have to be in the deal, or would you be happy with, as some Democrats and other Republicans have said, more high-tech border security funding?
Well, personally, I think we're slipping here into a semantical argument that doesn't make sense. $5.7 billion wouldn't build a wall that went from sea to shining sea. It'd build part of it. Right. And frankly, the Department of Homeland Security would tell you in certain places physical barriers make sense. Not everywhere, but certainly in many places it does. So I think we're at that point that should be acceptable. But I also agree that we need to take care of legal status for people that are here through no fault of their own, give them a path forward and legal status where they've got certainty. And again, as an appropriator and a guy that's been in the budget wars, I can tell you, you're going to have to deal with sequester. You're going to have to deal with the debt ceiling. That's got to be done this year. Why not do it all at once?
Congressman Jonathan Lemire, there's growing momentum in the White House and those close to the president to declare, he could declare a national emergency, and that could be his way out of this. So I'll put it to you bluntly, sir. Is that an appropriate use of presidential power?
It's not the best use of presidential power, in my opinion. Again, make the problem big. Have it where somebody can win, somebody can lose. What we're doing, if we do that, is basically punting the responsibility of Congress and the president into the courts and saying, we can't solve this, so you solve it. That's just, I don't think that's the best way forward. I'd rather get to a deal than continue the fight.
So you were counseling him. Do you feel like there are others in your party, Republicans, who, for the most part, have been reluctant to buck this president? We saw a few names who have said they would vote to reopen the government. Do you feel like others agree with you? Would they stand opposed to the president declaring this sort of national emergency? I
do think others agree with me. And frankly, my good friend Roy Blunt in the United States Senate has talked about something very similar to what I'm discussing here. That is, make the problem bigger. That is, let's solve things we know we're going to have to solve anyway in ways that everybody can walk away having achieved something. Right now, this is really a pretty small dispute with big consequences. The president actually offered to negotiate and literally cut the difference. That's normally a deal around here. He dropped from $5 billion to $2.5 billion, couldn't get any movement out of the Democrats. So this is $2.5 billion in a $4 trillion budget. This is much more about political theater and symbolism than it is about consequences consequential policy issues. I think you do better off making, again, putting real issues on the table that people want to solve and that they can take some credit for solving.
Hi, Congressman. It's Heidi. Thanks for joining us. You rightly point out that $5.7 billion wouldn't build a wall. So can you explain to us, for those of us who are confused, what the wall is? Because in the letter that the president sent to Congress, he only outlines about 200 miles of quote-unquote wall. So can you tell us where that wall would be? Would it be in New Mexico? Would it be in Arizona? Would it be in California? Or would you seize land in Texas? Before Congress appropriates money, as you know, there has to be specifics. And right now, haven't seen from anyone specifically what the definition of the wall is.
Well, I think that's a fair question, because I think it tends to be in the eye of the beholder. What we're really talking about is enhanced border security, not a wall. I think the best way to proceed, frankly, and we're not talking about enough money, again, to build a wall, is bring Department of Homeland Security in. They keep lists of these things. For instance, there's over, as I understand it, $1 billion worth of infrastructure needs at legal ports of entry right now. Why not do those kinds of things, those things that the professionals tell you they need to get done? Use barriers in areas that make sense, and avoid this wall debate, which has become really, again, a very toxic discussion, by actually doing things the professionals want you to do.
All right, we'll see if we get any movement today as the president heads to the border. Congressman Tom Cole, Republican of Oklahoma, thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we've got 90